Good morning. My name is Gary Price, one of the two co-presenters for this presentation. However, I am the only presenter this morning. Unfortunately, Peter Brantley couldn't make it in from California, so I will be here for the next 25 or so minutes, sharing a few thoughts. I had to revamp the presentation a bit. For those of you just coming in, the entire presentation, all of these things you can follow along with me or deviate as you see fit. It's at bit.ly/2024 lowercase CNI. When I'm not up in front of a group of people who I can't see, I am a librarian by training. I do a couple of things on a daily basis. I am the editor of ARL Day in Review, a daily newsletter, a daily roundup I put together every Monday through Thursday for the Association of Research Libraries. I'm also the co-founder and editor of a website for a library journal called InfoDOCKET. Oh, and by the way, ARL Day in Review is available to everyone, and it is a free resource. I also, over the last year or so, have been doing some work for Choice and their LibTech Insights. There is way more. So here, the proverbial Gary Price is speaking. Let's scroll through everything and then say goodbye. Thank you. Oh, I should also tell you, one of my nieces said, or my nephew said this to me, given that many, many years ago, back when I was born, and then years after that when I had hair, my parents gave me the initials of GDP. So now my relatives and two of my closest friends now are calling me Chat GDP, since all I talk about is AI and libraries. I won't read this to you, but I actually used an AI. I'm a big fan of Notion. Is anybody here using Notion as a CMS? One person, good job. I use Notion, and I'm going to be sharing you a resource that I've created for all of us with Notion. But I use Notion, which licenses their AI from OpenAI and Claude, Anthropic, to create an elevator pitch version of this page. Today's rapidly evolving AI landscape, libraries are uniquely positioned to lead transformation of information services and I'll skip down, by embracing agility, avoiding single solution dependencies, I wouldn't say that, using those exact words, and leveraging cross-industry insights. We're building a future where libraries remain central to knowledge, access, and verification. That is an important point in the AI era. So these days, I'm going to so many presentations like you, and everybody's using AI to help summarize, so I thought I would summarize my own page. Most of this, we're going to talk about actual resources, but a few quick thoughts. I won't be reading and sharing all of them, but and most of these things, especially further down in the page, they'll have links to examples and bookmarks to examples. My long-term thought is we're now at a point, I believe, and Cliff kind of got to this yesterday, building specialty AI tools, specialty GPTs based on information need, using curated resources that we help provide. I call that kind of a reference book model. There were many, back in the day of reference books, there were many reference books on the shelves that would do had basically the same data, but they were updated at different ways, organized in different manners, that kind of thing. And I think we're getting to that now. The right tool at the right time. I talked a lot about this 2 decades ago when the invisible web was around, using the right database at the right time. Now it's about using the right AI at the right time. And I believe we have a huge opportunity to be creating these specific information, these specific tools based on needs. And in many cases, they can also be created in a very much an ad hoc manner. One of the resources that I listed as one of the winners for 2024, and I bet I'm going to see a lot more hands raised with this one, is NotebookLM from Google. Many of you have, I would imagine many of you have tried and or played with that. That's a tool that, in addition to the cool podcasting tool where you can create podcasts on the fly, you can upload up to 50 documents, PDFs, and other formats and create basically ad hoc GPTs, in this case using Google Gemini. I've been doing whatever I do for well over 20 years, and I was around. I had a front row seat, as many of you did, to the birth of Google. This topic of AI can be overwhelming. And I spend most of my day working with ARL and other clients trying to help organize this and share these resources. It is overwhelming. And I think a divide and conquer, especially in organizations, might be a very good approach to take. Have, organize different groups. 1 week, one group focuses on one topic. 1 month, one group focuses on one topic. But remaining stagnant in your learning is absolutely something that should not be happening. Agility is key. Things change more than constantly. There are times over the course of a week where I see a company's doing one thing and then they're doing something else. They're releasing 5 new products every week. I don't believe right now we're at a point where we should be just sticking with one thing and one tool. We need to remain agile, and I think our role, not only internally, but amongst our users, is we need to have knowledge and awareness. That's easier said than done, I know, but of a variety of tools, and again, using the right tool, the right model, so on and so forth at the right time. I also think it's very important to be looking at what other communities are doing with AI, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be looking at through either one of your databases where you can get trade magazines, for example. You might, it might not be something that you find on a hotel industry newsletter or in an aviation industry newsletter or in the Car Wash Weekly and how they're using AI that might directly relate to what you're doing, but it might help spur a new idea. And I think that's really important, to be looking at how other industries are using and adapting to AI. And there are so many wonderful trade publications online, not to mention the resources you have coming into your libraries through aggregators and the like. Don't believe, well, it's hard to do this again, but try not to believe at least all of the hype. We're also now in a point of AI washing. I'm sure most of you have heard that phrase as well. The slightest bit of AI and it's the greatest tool ever. Sometimes there's no AI involved and they just rebranded it with AI, and it's very challenging to not believe the hype. And the only way to avoid that is by keeping your knowledge level up. Needless to say, as we stand here not very far from the Capitol and the White House, a new government means incredible amounts of uncertainty to what's happening next in terms of regulation and the like. I'll leave it at that. Lack of transparency with how these models are created. We've seen a push, and there's a link to talks about OpenAI models. There's a link to a major report that came out over the last year, but that is an issue, especially with closed providers. We don't know a lot of exactly where the training data is coming from. AI literacy, it's somewhere on here. Huge problem, huge issue, and I think given in the world that we live in and the lack of information literacy with the public in general, plus AI and the ability to churn out miss, or just false information for almost no money is really a huge issue. And I also believe, and I've said this for years, we should be playing a role in teaching and training our communities, meaning the community as a whole, wherever our libraries are located, and getting and working on understanding how all of this is working together. It's really a major issue, and it's, in my opinion, it's only going to get worse. And just, again, I'm not going to go in exact order, but I think something that happened yesterday is another way that we're going to be seeing better looking false information, and that is with OpenAI officially launching Sora. For paid subscribers, you can now create really great looking videos, and I think we're going to see more and more videos pushing mis or disinformation. Year in review. So we had major reports this year, all linked here for you from ARL and CNI. We know about those. Ithaca, SNR did a bunch of reports that they were kind enough to allow me to contribute to those. Another report that I have linked here for you that came out about a week ago is from the Computer Research Association and the Computing Consortium. And that is, and I have a link there for you, the future of information retrieval in the age of generative AI. I encourage all of you to take a look at that as well. Last year, I stood up here and talked about specifically a tool called Perplexity. and how that was an early user of RAG technology, Retrieval Augmented Generation. I think this has been the year of RAG. We're now seeing citations and other citations and the like for more and more tools. But again, 2 links for you to take a look at. We now have more citations, but how ChatGPT search misrepresents publishers' content. In other words, we now have citations, but this research from the Toast Center for Journalism at Columbia is showing that a lot of those citations, as we in our community know, are often wrong. And now publishers are saying, well, now you're causing us to not get the links back to what we have published, but also misattribution to things that you're saying we published that we didn't. So that is a major, major issue. So now we have more RAG, but how good are those actual citations? Let me go back to this version, actually. Some new research out of MIT. That was the paper was published a couple of months ago, but helping to figure out where to find the attribution to things, and there's a link there for you as well. Oh, another citation issue. This was from, I love the emoji, had to get that up there. But this happened in the last few weeks. Trained journalists were using a tool called ChatGPT to learn about presidential pardons, and they just published whatever it said. And a lot of it was wrong. So again, we know these issues, but even people who have a higher information need than the general public are just trusting what they find. And I continue to believe, and I think we already know, that this is a major, major issue. So again, more reading for you there. Licensing, lots of issues with that this year. I've given you links to a paper, an article that was published yesterday by Nature. Publishers are selling papers to train AIs and making millions. People who are speaking at this conference are quoted in that, and I've also given you a link to the generative AI licensing agreement tracker that Ithaca S&R is putting together. Lawsuits. December 23rd, I believe, or December 29th of 2024 was the New York Times OpenAI lawsuit. We've now seen lawsuits also with music AI and how that is being trained. So 2 companies, Studio and Udio, are being sued by the recording industry for taking recordings of music and training their AI and those as well, and they're claiming they weren't licensed properly. All sorts of things with OpenAI, obviously. The stability of the company, we dealt with that over the past year, people resigning, including letting the CEO go and then the co-founder coming back, all of that kind of things. Obviously seeing more local services from university, fine-tuning of larger models specifically for the university community, a university-developed products, several of which have been discussed at this conference, the launch of ChatGPT for education. How many of you, I'm just curious, how many of you at your universities, for those of you who are affiliated with those, how many of you have licensed agreements with a major provider, whether it be Microsoft or OpenAI? And I think by this time next year that there will be double the amount of hands. Last week we learned that ChatGPT passed 300 million weekly users, and as I said a moment ago, with the growth of RAG, we now have the launch of ChatGPT Search, even with bad citations. Also, I could have done this presentation, instead of year in review, it could have been just week in review. And that's what I'm getting at with the amount that's going on. Also, last week, for their 12 days of Christmas promotion, whatever they're calling it, OpenAI launched a $200 a month service for the latest models. It'll be interesting to see what kind of uptake they get for that service over the long term. I think they'll get a lot in the beginning, but will people continuously pay $200 a month for the latest models? And what does that mean for access to AI and the best models over the long term? And as I mentioned, Sora launched yesterday as well. There's a link to that. The open source AI definition from the Open Source Institute and pushback on that. I shared this article with a lot of people when it came out. Some thought it was interesting. Other people were like very timid about it. But I can tell you this, in the course of curating the resources I mentioned earlier, I rarely see libraries and librarians, specifically in librarian jobs, being mentioned outside of the library community. And that's why it was kind of just the headline alone, hot new job, AI librarian. It was kind of interesting to see that mentioned in a report from an HR firm called Korn Ferry. And I encourage you to take a look at this article as well. Two versions look up at the same time. I think for me, the most shocking AI story of the year, shocking might be an overstatement, difficult and depressing and something we need to do better with, came about 2 weeks ago. Did any of you happen to see, and there's a link to it for those of you who didn't see it, did any of you happen to see the 60-minute segment? I think it was actually the Sunday of Thanksgiving. It might have been the Sunday before that, about offshore labeling, the people who sit and label data hour after hour, day after day. Any of you see this? A lot of it is done, as you can probably imagine, offshore. And the 60 Minutes report talked about that going on in Africa. What was interesting to learn is those people are making $1 to $2 an hour. And in many cases, or in some cases, I should say, they talk to people who are working through middlemen for OpenAI, Microsoft, and the like. And then when it's time for them to get paid, their $1 to $2 an hour, those companies go out of business. I think this is something that we need to be aware of and think about. Just like we often talk about our climate issues, energy issues, yet as we all know right now, AI uses a lot of energy and over long term can cause problems with the climate. So these are things that we need to be thinking about, obviously, moving forward. Small language models that you can run on your computer, we're going to see a lot more interest in that going forward. UCLA last week announced that this comparative lit class will be using homegrown AI, and all of the course materials, including the textbook, will be AI generated. Something else I thought was interesting, and I think it was the middle of November, Microsoft announced some new AI technology that when you're chatting with somebody in a conference situation and they don't speak English, in real time, it will translate your voice. It'll be trained on your voice, and the people on the other end will hear your voice in their native language. Right out of some science fiction novel. We have heard, we've read, and there's a link to you, National Archives of the United States, NARA, is creating AI tools for search of their catalogs. Who needs a week in review? It can be a day in review. And yesterday, Reddit announced there will be launching an AI-powered chatbot for their material. Now, by the way, for those of you who are Reddit people who want to see how this technology is being used with Reddit, the tool that I mentioned earlier, Perplexity, allows you to drop down on their selections and search Reddit using the Perplexity database. Something else that I learned about sitting next to Rosie Metz at the Charleston conference is server slowdowns. How many of you are experiencing any of these at your institutions where you're getting hit, almost like denial of service attacks by the AI companies? More and more people. I'm sure I see Rosie right in front of me. Hi. I think this is a major issue, and she's going to be writing something for InfoDOCKET in the future, and I think it's something that we really need to be paying attention to. It's also kind of interesting, except if it's your server that's being slowed down, then it's a problem, a big problem. The winners, I've mentioned NotebookLM. Why has this been such a winner? Well, sure, you can upload up to 50 megabytes for free and analyze that in one sitting, in one collection. It's one of the largest ones I know of, especially for free. Obviously, you need a Google account. Obviously, the podcast is very cool. Ease of use. Obviously, Google's branding and Google's awareness really helps, but ease of use. It's as simple as just dropping and to create a podcast, which is so novel. It's ease of use. Ease of use is so important, as we all know. How many of you have heard of this project from Google? It's listed as experimental or experiment. This is the podcast tool trained for academic material. So now, right here, right now, you can use this. They have it plugged, or you can upload any paper you like. But also built into this right now is the archive database of preprints. You can search the archive database, find, I think, up to 4 preprints, and create a podcast discussing 1 to 4 preprints at the same time. I think it goes without saying that I would bet by the time we do this again next year, Illuminate will probably, well, knowing Google, it might not be. But if this is out of experimental mode, Illuminate and this technology, this model built for academic material, will be baked into something that we also know, which, by the way, happy birthday, Google Scholar. By the way, Google Scholar turned 20 years old the week before Thanksgiving. Time does fly. But this is Google, the podcasting tool, but trained for academic material. For, 10 years now, I've been a huge fan of Semantic Scholar, which in many ways is, depending on the need, much better than Google Scholar. As those of you know, Semantic Scholar comes to Paul Allen Artificial Group up in Seattle. About a month ago, they launched AI2 Open Scholar. So this is Semantic Scholar. This is the first launch of this product. And like they did with Semantic Scholar, it started with just computer science-related material. A month ago, they released their GPT, beginning with computer science material. What also makes this interesting is that they have open-sourced all the content and all the technology. So this is perhaps will be of interest to you and your developers. It's something to take a look at, where you can get some technology and help create your own open source GPTs in your community. My favorite tool, this was on the list last year, but I want to mention it again this year, and it actually got a shout out, and actually a long article about it in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. This is called Chatbot Arena. This is it's obviously built for, not obviously, but it's built for developers, but I find it useful tool, and that is it allows you, my preferred version is the side-by-side version, where completely for free, you can select up to one of 83 different models and have those 2 models compete next to each other, where at the same time, the query is distributed to 2 different models and you can compare the results. So it's a great tool to see the results, but also for educational purposes. And this one is completely free. Plus, you get access to 83 different models and different versions of different models. Next year, I said this last year, the big thing next year, I was a year early, but it's better to be early than late in a situation like this. Autonomous AI agents, agentic AI, as you like. This is going to be a thing, and it's already becoming a thing. And just in the amount of press attention and trade magazine attention and academic papers, I'm seeing more and more of it. I've given you a link. Anthropic, the Claude people, released an early version for selected users, and there's a review of some of the very basic things that a professor at the University of Pennsylvania did with it when it first was released. I've also given you a link to one of the more interesting papers over the last year. It's a visionary type of paper. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but it's from a company called Sakana. That's the correct pronunciation in Japanese. And it's called the AI Scientist, towards a fully automated, open-ended scientific discovery. This is, you create the prompts, you ask the questions, and it will autonomously build you do all the research for you, write the paper, and basically submit the paper to whatever press you like. It's not going to be happening anytime soon, I don't think, but I think it's a paper and press coverage of that paper that I think is worth knowing about and at least reviewing and helping vision for the future. Also, Virtual Lab by AI Scientists. That's another article that was published as recently as about 24 hours ago. more browser integration. The actual AI tool will be, and this has been going on for a while, but I'm seeing more and more of it. Opera, which is a browser that's been around for years, they have something called Leo. It's built right into the browser. Microsoft Edge is doing more and more of that. They just released another add-on for certain users that actually will continuously see whatever is in your browser window. Privacy issues with that, but something to be aware of. It's called Copilot Vision. Obviously, Apple getting involved. In the last week, we've seen Amazon, the AI provider. Right now, they're using most of their AI is being developed for the enterprise, but I would not doubt that we see more consumer-oriented, academic-oriented tools over the next year. So a few tools. I've mentioned AI Scholar. I want to also mention, by the way, that along with using AI Scholar to search just the computer science articles from Semantic Scholar, Perplexity does offer an add-on tool, what they call a focus tool, that also allows you to search and prompt the entire database. If there's one resource, if you want to stay a little bit ahead of the curve, it takes a little bit of work and time, and it's not curated, find one or two categories in the archive database. It is unbelievable what you find in there on a day in, day out basis. And I think just a quick browse of some of the titles and maybe a few of the abstracts will be very, very useful to a lot of you. We'll go through that. Scholar C is a tool that I've been using and I actually pay for. It was mentioned last year. They revamped the tool. It looks better than ever. And they're using AI. It's not a GPT, but they're using AI for really, really nice summaries. We talked about that. I also encourage you to take a look at something called the Artificial Intelligence Incident Database. These are people, I believe Mozilla helps fund this, where they're looking at some of the issues that come up with privacy and security. It's a nice one-stop shop for all of that information. The developing a public interest training commons was one of the project I'm really interested in seeing how it develops over the next year. And I know Dave Hansen was talking about it yesterday. Finally, 1 minute and 55 seconds. This is a tool that is now obviously linked for you. As I said earlier, it's overwhelming the amount of material that I'm seeing as I'm working for individual clients or day in review and the like. I couldn't keep all the AI. It was getting to be ridiculous for me to keep all the AI stuff mixed in with everything else. So I am now using Notion, and now it's available to you, at least for the time being. If somebody would like to help me fund this, that would be cool too. But this is everything that I am curating about AI all day, every day. What's cool about it is, so I created this for a specific need, my need, and hopefully it'll be valuable to you. So when I find an article, with one click, I can save it to Notion. And by the way, you can do this for any topic. It just takes you to get the articles or books or material to find it and get it here. And that's done with one click. All of the other columns, and you can look at it, there are various ways of viewing this. All of the other columns are created. So here's an article, for example. I can click on it. I can't do it right now with this one. Go here, actually. I can click on it and actually get a summary, get Library of Congress subject headings. All of the prompts that drive each individual column are created by me or by the user. So if I want to extract a certain thing, if I want to ask a question about anything, I create the prompt, create the column, I click once to submit the article to Notion, and everything else is done in a few seconds. So it's a way to actually use the AI, see how well or often how not well it works in a tool that I have found, and a tool that can also help you, I hope, stay on the leading edge of some of the things that I'm finding in regards to AI. So, for example, let's see, I can't actually open this right now. You can try it for yourself. But what I want to point out, this was created for my specific needs. Hopefully it'll be of value to you. Each of the individual columns, extract keywords, extract Library of Congress, create Library of Congress subject headings, extract all the names of people and entities. All of these are created by prompts that I have provided. So if somebody says to me, and feel free to email me, can you extract this from every article? Can you tell me this about every article? I, in a matter of seconds, with your help perhaps, can create a prompt, create a column, go to sleep, and in the morning, that entire column will be extracted or have the information that we've prompted for, and we can see how good or bad it is. So again, it's a way to keep myself current, hopefully you current, and actually test how well some of this works in a practical application. Any comments? 1 or 2 minutes for questions or comments. I hope some of you're leaving with 1 or 2 things you didn't know about when you arrived. We have time for questions? Or I've just overwhelmed you, which is what I'm trying not to do. I did it anyhow. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great rest of the conference, and I hope to talk to you soon.